Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of the Man Watches Sports podcast. I am your host, Austin Hoagland, and it's nice to see you guys again. I hope your day is going well. Just glad to be back for the third episode. So, I just want to say right off the bat that I am putting in a lot of work into these show episodes and everything, and I'm very determined to keep going, putting these out. And I think I have kind of a more consistent schedule now, about every Tuesday and Friday, I think is when I'm going to try to make these episodes for you guys. And, I spend a lot of time planning these out, recording these, editing these. I'm new to this kind of thing, so it's taking me probably a little bit longer than it should. But it's all new to me, and I'm going to do my best for you guys to put these out and do it consistently and try to make these the best quality that I can with the topics that you guys want to see. And if you don't particularly like the topics that I'm talking about, feel free to drop a comment and tell me what you'd like to hear about on the next show. And I will definitely take your suggestions into mind, and I'd love to talk about what you guys want to hear about. So yeah, about every Tuesday and Friday is when I'm thinking. And so let's talk about the topics for today's show. Today we're going to kind of keep it a little bit shorter than last time. Last time was kind of a longer episode. I had a ton to talk about this time. It's a little bit on that range. I have about 5 topics, including the Q&A mailbag, of course. So the first one is we're going to talk about Monday Night Football. Just happened. We're going to talk about Ravens Chiefs and what I think about that game. I have a lot to talk about since I made the topic about the Ravens being the best team in football on the last episode of the podcast, and the Kansas City Chiefs are my hometown team, the team that I root for personally. So a lot to talk about there. I'm going to tell you why I think the Los Angeles Lakers will win the NBA Finals, and the Finals is just about to start, so I have a lot to talk about with that. We're going to talk about Jerry Jones' quote about Dak Prescott and why I think that Dak Prescott is a more talented quarterback than Tony Romo. We're going to talk about Manchester City and why they don't look like a top 4 team at the moment in the Premier League, and then we'll end off with the Q&A mailbag. So, hope you guys like the topics today. Let's get right into it. So, my first topic of the day is this. The Baltimore Ravens cannot beat the Kansas City Chiefs. It's just a pure fact right now, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it, not the Baltimore Ravens, not their fans. And I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but it is not looking good for you guys against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, since Lamar Jackson has been the starting quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, they are 0-3 against the Chiefs. They have not been able to win a single game. They've made most of them pretty close. This was probably like the worst, blowout, I'd say. It's not totally a blowout. It was a 14-point game. It's whatever you want to say. But this was probably the least close out of all the matchups between the Ravens and the Chiefs. And this is probably the one where Baltimore came in with the highest expectations. And, they were looked at as the best team in football. I called them the best team in football. And they came out and they looked like a subpar team compared to these Chiefs. So last night on Monday Night Football, the Baltimore Ravens lost 34-20 to the Kansas City Chiefs. And let's talk about Lamar Jackson for a second because I know that's what you guys want to hear about. The whole thing before the game was this QB matchup. You have Lamar Jackson, former MVP this last year, and then Patrick Mahomes, the MVP 2 years ago, and the Super Bowl MVP of last year. Lamar did not have an amazing game. Let's look at the stats here. He was 15 for 28 for 97 yards, and he did throw a touchdown, but he also, and he had 0 interceptions. But 15 for 28 for 97 yards. Clearly that means he couldn't get down the field. And, he wasn't extremely accurate. 15 for 28, that's slightly above 50%. But it's not exactly what you want out of your star quarterback, right? And especially when you compare them to Mahomes' stats, which we'll get into later. He had a few bad passes, too, that should have or could have been picked off by the Chiefs defenders. And I really think that it didn't look good for him last night. You look at the stats and you're like, well, he threw a touchdown. He had 0 interceptions. Maybe this was just a game where they didn't ask him to throw that much. And, they only asked him to throw 28 times, which is, a little below average, I'd say, for a starting quarterback, especially a quarterback of his prominence and his prestige. And yet he did throw some really bad balls in this game, some that are just going to go down as incompletions that should have been interceptions. And I think that the Chiefs defense played well, but, he couldn't do anything. And he did shred him a little bit in the running game. I believe he averaged like over 9 yards per carry, and he was the leading rusher on the Ravens, but it wasn't amazing for him. Let's just say that. It wasn't the greatest performance, especially out of a guy who has been looked at as potentially a back-to-back MVP candidate this year. And I think this game will be looked at and will kind of take him out of contention for that. And it's not all on his back either. Let's make that clear. It wasn't all on his back because he had receivers who dropped the ball a lot. And I'm talking about Mark Andrews specifically. Mark Andrews is their primary receiving target. He's a tight end. And, they usually try to get him open in the middle of the field, just like Travis Kelce, for the Kansas City Chiefs. And sometimes he would thread the middle of the field, and sometimes he would find himself open on the sidelines. And, Lamar would make the right pass, and sometimes even in the end zone. And yet, Mark Andrews just let it slip out of his hands. Maybe it went off of his fingertips. Maybe he just couldn't make the catch. It was decent defense some of the time, but, those are balls that he should catch, especially being a tight end, being a bigger receiving threat than some of the guys he was matched up on. And I think he had the advantage for most of those matchups, and he let it slip away, and his hands are what really cost him any kind of significant yardage. And, we got to look at Mark Andrews. We got to look at Hollywood Brown and the rest of this receiving core for Baltimore and really wonder, what they need to do with that core, because it looks like it needs a big star on it. It looks like they don't have a wide receiver one necessarily. And so they're going to have to make a play for him. There's been talks about Allen Robinson potentially being a target for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think if they manage to get Allen Robinson or anybody of his caliber, this team would look a lot more deadly. Lamar would have a favorite target to go to that isn't Mark Andrews. And I think that it would overall just help the confidence of the other guys who are getting thrown to a lot. And they're just like second, third receivers. They shouldn't be the primary targets. The running attack for the Ravens was solid, but it really took a long time to get going, I feel, especially in the first half. I mean, they couldn't really get any yards of offense at all, and it really just didn't look very good for them at all, and their offense was just kind of slow to get off the ground, and the passing game never really developed at all, but the rushing game really took until the second half to start going. Lamar had some good plays in the first half on his legs, but it really wasn't anything special, nothing that got them significant points. And so it really wasn't that good for Baltimore. The second half looked a lot more optimistic. They scored 10 more points, but it just never really developed on offense for them. Their defense, too, the most probably respected part of their game. You look at Lamar, you look at that offense, and you're like, they're really good. But the reason they're looked at as the best team in football is because of their defense. It's because it's a complete team. There are no holes. At least that's what we were saying. And their defense just could not keep up. Their all-pro cornerbacks could not keep up with the speed and route running of Kansas City wide receivers. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, McCole Hardman just got absolutely free for a touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these guys were getting separation, and it did not look good, especially for one Marcus Peters, which, I could take my time to gloat about how Marcus Peters used to be on the Chiefs, and now he's getting cooked by the Chiefs wide receivers. But I'm not going to do that. I have more respect, more integrity, and more, journalistic integrity than to make fun of Marcus Peters for that. But he did not look good. And Marlon Humphrey had some good plays throughout. But, it was just that the overall, I mean, the Ravens defense could not keep up. They threw so many different looks at Patrick Mahomes, and they seemed to just get picked apart on every single look that they threw at him. They would run a lot of blitzes on third downs, and Mahomes would somehow find a way to flip it to a guy on a screen or get outside the pocket and, run it a few yards on his legs, get out of bounds. He was just making the right plays, and his decision-making was absolutely phenomenal in this game. And there was nothing that the Ravens could do to to counter it. Let's look at Mahomes' stats. He had himself a day, 31 for 42 passing for 382 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. And let's not forget that he had the first touchdown on the game on the ground. So, he rushed in for that touchdown, and he was untouched, not even close to being touched, running into the end zone. It was just a really good day for him, and it just makes me look with way more respect for him because, I have so much respect for Patrick Mahomes as somebody who's watched his every game, his every move, and yet still he somehow manages to amaze me every game. He looks so much better than he did, even in his MVP season. And I know the stats may not show that for this year, but his decision making was phenomenal. You look at that Chargers game and you kind of are left wondering because he had a lot of bad passes and he didn't always make the right decision. But this game, he was on his game, and I'm really proud of him for that. The Chiefs' defense actually started to step up, and they looked like they were in their postseason form of last year. It really took until about, week 11, I'd say, that they probably started to kind of gel. And yet, without some key pieces, the Chiefs managed to keep up, and they managed to stifle a team who has gone off in the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, and it looks like the Chiefs are the best defense that the Ravens have played so far. And so I got to give them nothing but props, man. It was really good to see that. My main thing is the Chiefs look so different from how they did in week 2, and it makes me wonder if they were overlooking the Chargers and kind of more focused on this game. It's really bad to do that sometimes, but they managed to escape with the win, and they got a huge win on Monday Night Football. So I can't fault them too much. The performance just does not reflect well on the Ravens and their postseason hopes. They're already known as a team who chokes in the postseason a little bit. They're not very good compared to their regular season, numbers. But, they really had a chance to show that they could hang with the top level teams. And they kind of failed here. And I'm kind of a little bit disappointed in a team that I was already anointing as the best team in the NFL. The Chiefs really should be favorites at this point to repeat in the Super Bowl and probably win it. I'm really happy about how things have gone for them the first 3 weeks. Week 2 was a little bit of a scare against the Chargers, but I'm going to give them a pass for that one because they faced a team with a completely new starting quarterback. They planned to play against Tyrod Taylor. They ended up playing against Justin Herbert, and they were looking a little bit forward to this game. Let's keep it real. They were looking forward to this game a little bit more than that game. So I got to give it to the Chiefs. I really think that it's their league to lose. And so I'm going to keep monitoring their progress, and I'll keep letting you know how those Chiefs look. We'll get to a little bit of Chiefs topics a little bit later in the video with the Q&A mailbag. But that's all I have for the Ravens and the Chiefs game, Monday Night Football. It was a great matchup. For being a game that wasn't exactly close most of it, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really fun game to watch, even if the Ravens weren't always putting up their best fight. So that's everything for that. And let's move on right to the next topic. And we're going to be talking about a different Los Angeles team than the Chargers. We're going to be talking about the Los Angeles Lakers. Here's why you should believe that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to win the NBA Finals this year. The 2020 NBA Finals will be contested between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. Game 1 starts on Wednesday, September the 30th, which from my recording day is tomorrow. And you already know I'm going to keep 3 eyes glued on that one. So it's going to be really fun to watch. I think this is going to be a fun finals. Let's get into why I think the Lakers are going to win this finals. And I'm pretty confident in my statement about that. And I really think it comes down to a very simple reason. Star power. Let's keep it honest here. The Los Angeles Lakers are beating the Miami Heat in star power by a lot. And while I do think Eric Spoelstra is an incredible coach, and he has so much defensive talent to work with on this Miami Heat roster, I just don't believe they're going to be able to neutralize LeBron James. Jimmy Butler has come out recently, and if you have the NBA app, you probably got the notification. He's feeling confident, and he's detailing their plan to stop LeBron James. How many times have we heard this? Let's keep it real. How many times have we heard people's plans to neutralize LeBron James? And this man is entering his 10th NBA Finals. And even more than that, he's had more than that in experience being in the playoffs, playing in the NBA, playing against top tier talent, and he's always looked like an amazing competitor. And for most years of his career, he's looked like the best player in the league. And so many people have tried to find ways to neutralize him. They've thrown different defensive schemes at him, different guys at him. And especially in the NBA Finals, it just hasn't worked. The only time that people can realistically say that LeBron James was neutralized in an NBA Finals was the 2011 Finals, where he was on the Miami Heat and they were facing the Dallas Mavericks. But ever since then, we've looked at LeBron's finals record and who he's gone against. I mean, he's gone up against guys like Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals, guys who are known for being able to shut down star players, and he's looked good against guys like Kawhi. I mean, LeBron James is just a different breed, and he's shown that in the NBA Finals, and we've just seen him overcome the obstacles, and I really do think he's going to be here. I mean, he's in a very familiar position. He's in familiar territory, and every time we've seen a team try to neutralize him in the NBA Finals, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It feels like, no matter what you try to throw at him, we can even look at this playoffs if you want to, and we can see all the different plans that they've tried to neutralize LeBron James, and none of them have seemed to pay off in the end. You throw double teams at him, he's going to pass to an open guy. If you try to play him close, he's going to get around you and he's going to make it to the rim. And that's exactly where you don't want him. If you force him to pull up, he's actually been really good at shooting threes and mid-rangers so far in the NBA playoffs. I mean, there is no way you can stop this guy. He is impossible to stop. LeBron James is the best player in the NBA. It is going to be extremely difficult for the Miami Heat to even slow him down. He's gone toe-to-toe in 9 other finals with teams, that I would say are better than this Miami Heat roster. If you look back at all the NBA Finals teams he's faced, not all of them are a clear team that's better than Miami. But if you look at them, look at the Warriors, right? The 2015-2016 Warriors. I don't think I need to say it. That's his best finals win. That's one of the most memorable finals of all time, I'd say, if not the number one most memorable. And that team is much better than this Miami Heat team, I'd say. And he made an impossible run, and he played amazing in that finals. I don't have to look at every individual team that he's went up against, but I think it's fair to say that he's gone up against better teams in the finals, and he's won. Now let's focus on Anthony Davis, right? Anthony Davis, he's never been in the finals before. In fact, this is clearly his deepest playoff run by a long shot. He is so lethal from everywhere on the court. I just finished talking about LeBron James and whatever defensive strategy you throw at him, it doesn't seem to work because he can pull it from 3 now, apparently in these playoffs. And when he's around the rim, he's really hard to guard. But Anthony Davis has been maybe the best mid-range shooter in the NBA in the playoffs. I know that might be blasphemous to Kawhi Leonard, but it has been incredible watching this guy make shots that nobody else in the NBA should be able to make. And that's where people, I feel like, are actually going to try to neutralize him. Because teams have kind of tried on LeBron, but, they kind of just let him go most of the time. With Anthony Davis, it seems like the Rockets tried a strategy to, make him unplayable. And, a lot of teams have thrown different stuff at him. Thrown a lot of double teams on Anthony Davis. A lot of double teams have come for him in this playoffs. And if you try to take him out, it's just he finds a way, he really does. And I think that's even the case if Bam Adebayo's guarding him. Look, I really like Bam Adebayo. I'd consider him probably a top 10 defensive player in the league. And yet still, I believe that even if he is coming on a double team against Anthony Davis, that Davis is going to somehow find ways to either pass it out or make a shot that nobody else should be able to make. I just have a lot of faith in these two, in LeBron James and Anthony Davis from the Los Angeles Lakers. On top of that, you have other really good playmakers on this Lakers roster, like Rajon Rondo, who's been playing very good these playoffs. He has the moniker playoff Rondo for a reason. It's because he seems to step it up, and he's looked a lot better. And if he's out on the court, then he's going to be another guy who can get it to Anthony Davis and get him into work maybe in the post. And let's not hesitate here, and let's talk about the guy that I know that all Lakers fans are upset with, Danny Green. Now, I'm not saying that Danny Green's going to be good in the NBA Finals, but I'm just saying that all the shooters on the Los Angeles Lakers have potential to make games unwinnable for the Miami Heat. Because if Danny Green gets hot, and if KCP gets hot, and you have LeBron and Anthony Davis, and you have really good defensive pieces like Dwight Howard, and sometimes JaVale McGee, sometimes if he's not fouling out, it's going to be almost impossible. And that is all to say that I believe this series may get close if momentum stays hot for the Heat. And I know that's a weird statement to make after I just told you how confident I was in pretty much all the pieces on the Los Angeles Lakers. But I have to say, man, that I really respect this Miami Heat team. For as much as I just talked the Lakers up, I think that the Heat could make this a close series. And the Heat really just have all the pieces to make this fun. But they're going to have to be in top form if they want to make this a close series. Let's keep it honest. If they're not playing at their best, if their shooters aren't hitting, and if their defense isn't A1, they're going to be at the victimhood of LeBron James and all of the pieces around him. It's going to be really tough. And so they're going to have to play their best. And I think that they can. Teams from the Rockets to the Nuggets have thrown different looks at the Lakers, and it has been shown that they may be the most adaptable team in the league. You find a strategy to take out, a certain thing that's been working for the Lakers, and they just find something else that works. It's going to be really hard because sometimes it's going to look like the Heat may have the edge, and then the Lakers come back, and they find something that works, and they abuse it. And I really do think that LeBron's going to hit his peak in this series. I believe in him a lot, and I think he's at his best when the pressure's on. And though it may not be close, I think it will be a little bit closer than some people. I think it's going to go 6 games. I think that LeBron's going to hit his peak here for the whole season, maybe for the last few seasons, because, last year he was injured. He didn't even make the playoffs. And I think he's just going to be at his best, and he's going to remind us why he's the best player in the NBA. So I think that the Lakers are going to win this series in 6 games. I'll be interested to see how Game 1 goes, and it's not going to cloud my judgment. If the Miami Heat win and they look really good in Game 1, I'm still going to stick to my prediction. So that's everything for the Lakers-Heat series. I hope that you guys were interested in that, and I hope that you guys leave a comment. Tell me what you guys think. What is your finals prediction for the Lakers-Heat finals? We got another football topic here. Let's talk about Jerry Jones, Dak Prescott, Tony Romo. A lot of familiar names there for Cowboys fans, I'd assume. And here's why I think Dak Prescott has more talent than Tony Romo. So recently, the Seattle Seahawks defeated the Dallas Cowboys 38-31, and at the end of the game, Dak missed a throw, and he sealed their loss with an interception. Not a great play, I'd say, not an amazing end to the game, and it makes him look bad no matter how well he played for the other 3 3/4 of the game. He's not going to get away with it because of what happened at the very end, and he's the one who ended the game badly and took them out of the game. And so after this, Jerry Jones had a statement to say, and he said that those kinds of missed opportunities are what separate Dak from Patrick Mahomes or even Tony Romo. And people have a lot to say about this, and I think it's a very fun topic to talk about, talking about, comparing him to the present and the past. Where does Dak Prescott rank? How really good is he? And that's been a question that's been on the minds of a lot of people for a long time. How good is Dak Prescott? Well, I'm here to tell you what I think. How good I think Dak Prescott is. And let's get into it. Let's see. How good is Dak Prescott? To preface this video segment, I'd like to say I have nothing but respect for Tony Romo. I spent my childhood watching him, and he was actually one of my favorite quarterbacks as a kid. It was about him and Peyton Manning. They were my 2 favorites I really liked the Colts back then. I don't know why, but I really just loved Peyton Manning, Reggie Wayne, and Tony Romo. Tony Romo was like my guy. I loved watching him have success in the NFL. So this is not a biased thing where I just like Dak Prescott or I don't like Tony Romo. So this is also not talking about all-time greatness or accomplishments. It's not talking about what they've accomplished in their careers. Because if you look at that, it'll probably go to Romo. He didn't do too much in terms of winning championships or anything like that, but we're just talking about pure talent here. Just how good are they as a football player, as a quarterback. So Dak seems to be a really good quarterback, but I just don't feel right with him in this Cowboys system. I don't know what it is, right? I can't put my finger on it exactly. What is wrong with this Cowboys team? What's keeping them from winning games? Why can't Dak be at his best every game? There's just something that I can't put my finger on, and I don't think it's inconsistency from him. I think it's something to do with the way this roster's made up. Maybe it's coaching. I think McCarthy has done a decent job so far. But I just don't feel right with this team. Dak makes occasional mistakes, but Romo did just the same. We've seen Romo choke at the end of games. We've seen that in his career. If you go back and watch every Tony Romo game ever, you're going to see that he lost a few games that he was totally in, and he had a chance to win for his team, and he was the one who lost the game for them. And Dak just did just the same. And we've seen Dak make game-winning drives, just like we've seen Tony Romo make game-winning drives. So I think it's unfair to regard Tony Romo as this clutch god or like somebody who's just known as a finisher, somebody who's known as the guy that comes through in the clutch and makes the best plays possible. It's just not him. And I don't think Dak is that either, to be fair. But I don't think it's fair to call Dak a worse quarterback than Romo because of that reason that isn't even solidly true. Romo was really, really good. Don't get me wrong. There always seemed to be a ceiling with him as their starting quarterback. And you can say the same if you'd like to about Dak Prescott, but I don't feel like we've seen his peak. I don't think we've seen Dak at his best yet. And so it's hard for me to say that they have a ceiling right now. I think that they could make a deep playoff run, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Sure, there were years with bad teams around Tony Romo, but there were also years where they were expected to do big things, and they failed. Romo had expectations on him at some point. It's not like the Cowboys roster was just terrible for every year that he was there. I mean, there were times where he was a part of a great Cowboys team, and they made it to the playoffs, and they looked really good in the regular season, and they just came up short. And it might not have been all of his fault, but, he certainly contributed to that. I think if Romo was on the level of, the best quarterbacks like Mahomes is, then I think he could have led them to the Super Bowl at least. And Dak may have another chance to make a good playoff run with their division being so horrible this year. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles, and they are 0-2-1 right now. They tied with the Bengals this last week. You look at the Giants, who can't seem to do anything right. They just got blown out by the 49ers, a team that's starting a backup quarterback. And the Washington football team, who has looked inconsistent at best, and it looks like Dwayne Haskins may not be the answer for them. I think that the Cowboys are going to win this division no matter how terrible of a record they have. They might win at a 7-9 record for all I know. But they're going to get their chance in the playoffs. And it's going to be time for Dak to prove his stuff, I think. Some actually predicted the Dallas Cowboys to make it to the Super Bowl, and some even predicted them to win. Now, am I part of the crowd that thinks that the Dallas Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl? No, sir. I am not going to say that. You guys saw my Super Bowl prediction last time, and it is not the Dallas Cowboys who I believe. But I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's a crazy take, and that's the important part of all this. I don't think saying the Dallas Cowboys making the Super Bowl is something necessarily insane to say or a clickbait thing for all the Dallas Cowboys fans all around the USA. I think it's a legitimate claim to make that they have a chance at the Super Bowl this year. I think that Dak Prescott has a lot of talent around him, and I think he can lead that talent to at least the conference championship game. We've seen him win playoff games before. It's not such a terrible stretch that he has a few good playoff games and Amari comes out and plays well and Zeke is unstoppable and their defense looks good and they make it to the conference championship game. Not a terribly hard thing to believe in my eyes. And I do think that they'll win their division, and I think they'll at least win in the wild card game if they end up in that round of the playoffs. Those are my expectations for this year's Dallas Cowboys. I think that's what they should do. Anything past that is beyond my expectations. Good for them. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for Dak Prescott. I want to see him succeed in the league. I really like Ezekiel Elliott. I really like a lot of people on this Cowboys roster, and I want to see them succeed. And so it's all up to them at this point. Can they gel? Can they win these close games next time? Can Dak step up a little bit more? I think we need to see a little bit more out of him, but I think he's more talented than Romo. And I think he has more potential than Romo. I think Dak could be a really good quarterback in this league, and he could lead his team to a Super Bowl eventually. But I think it's all growth for him, not just in football, but I think he's growing as a leader as well, and I really want to see what he does in the future. So that's it for the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, why he is more talented than Tony Romo. I'm actually not going to take a break this episode, so I might be absolutely parched by the end of this. So if I start choking up, then that's why. So let's look at our second to last topic, and that is that Manchester City doesn't look like a top 4 team in the Premier League. Now, let me preface this, right? I like to preface most of my segments and tell you that these look like hot takes, but I like to explain myself. I've already expressed my doubts about this team from match day 1, when they weren't even playing. And even though it's only 2 games, it's hard not to see and not to expect more from this squad. We've watched them play 2 games so far. And even the first game where they won pretty handily, I wasn't exactly impressed. And on Sunday, they lost 5-2 against Leicester City. That's not what you want to see out of this Man City team. And let me go through why I don't believe they're at their best right now and why I am doubting their possibility of winning the Premier League title or contending for it even. They gave up 3 of those goals on Sunday to penalties, and 2 of those scored penalties came from Jamie Vardy. I really love Jamie Vardy, and if I could talk about him all day, maybe I would, because he's one of my favorite forwards in soccer, in the Premier League, in England. I love Jamie Vardy. I love watching Leicester City just to see Jamie Vardy and what he does. And that said, though, he should not be getting a hat trick against what some could consider to be the best team, the best constructed team, the most expensive team in the Premier League. It should not come down to that. And Vardy can be as talented as he wants. But there is no excuse for Manchester City giving up a hat trick to him. And then 2 additional goals that weren't from Jamie Vardy. Conceding that many goals is unacceptable for them. And I think they really need to look into their team and really assess what's went wrong with them so far. They kind of just looked worn out in the second half, and their defense was porous at best. I mean, the fact that they let up so many opportunities to Leicester City, you're just asking for them to convert those many opportunities. And, it wasn't like last week where they gave up opportunities, but, the other team couldn't convert those opportunities. Leicester City came out, and they were ready. I mean, they knew how much this match meant to them and how important it was to get these 3 points. And they took advantage of the defense of Manchester City. It didn't look good, and they need to either change up their scheme and what kind of formation that they're running, or they need to find what talent works best with each other, because clearly the chemistry is somewhere off, or maybe there's individual guys who aren't playing up to par. And I wish I could tell you exactly who was the problem on that team, but there's just no one clear individual problem that we can look at and point to and be like, this is the reason why they're not winning games. It's not like that. I mean, it looks like an overall team issue, and I think that Pep needs to really talk to his team, and he needs to look at the roster construction and really look at what's gone wrong so far. If they keep putting up games like this, then they won't be in contention for the Premier League title this season. You know, in other years, maybe they could get away with mistakes like this and looking like this, you know, if they short up their defense a little bit. But if they want to compete with Liverpool or any of the other teams that decide that they want to, you know, put their name in the hat for the Premier League title this season, then they are going to have to make maybe a big move. You know, maybe they're going to have to make a big move. Maybe they're going to have to sell off somebody, and maybe they're going to have to bring somebody big in. I know that roster construction is already almost complete for Man City, and that, you know, they've already spent so much money, and they're very happy and confident in a lot of these pieces. And there's some significant injuries on their squad that's preventing them from being at their full potential. But that being said, you know, it's not all sunshine and flowers right now. And so, you know, you at least have to take a look at what you can do. It may be another runaway victory for Liverpool at this rate. You know, Liverpool has looked like the team they did last season. They look unstoppable almost, and it's really fun to watch their games and see how good their team is. Sure, they've made mistakes too, and, you know, they don't look perfect, but, you know, at this rate, they look better than Manchester City by, I'd say, a significant margin. I want to see more. And the reason why I'm going so hard on this team, you know, even though it's one game that they lost and another game where they didn't look amazing, even though they won pretty handily, it's because I am confident about how good this team could be and how much potential they really have. And I want to see a close race for the Premier League title. This weekend, they actually play Leeds United, a side that has looked quite well over the first few match weeks, and they have scored a bunch. You know, we saw them in that first week against Liverpool, and they put up 3 goals, and they looked like they were, you know, going toe-to-toe with the league's best team. So I think it's going to be extremely important, if ever, to, you know, make the right plays defensively. I don't know if that's a coaching thing. I don't know if it's a managerial thing that Pep needs to do, or if it's figuring out what players to use, but they cannot just give goals to them like they just did against Leicester, or it is going to be another weekend gaining 0 points for the table. So that's what I have to say about Manchester City and their struggle this weekend. That is going to be it for the specific topics. We're going to hop into the Q&A mailbag, and then I'll be done. It's a pretty quick episode this time, I know, but I only had a few topics that I really wanted to talk about and that were like super interesting to me and I thought would be interesting to you guys. So this one might be a little bit long. I'm not sure. We're into the Q&A mailbag. I'm excited. I love the Q&A mailbag. I love answering you guys' questions. And I love hearing things that I didn't think about before, because I kind of go through some of the same stuff, you know, in my mind. I'm thinking maybe I have a one-track mind sometimes, and I think of sort of similar topics to each other. So hearing what you guys want to see on the show is super interesting. So please drop a comment below. Ask me some questions. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys want answered. This question actually comes from Bryson Martin, my absolute boy, one of the hosts of the 816 Hour. If you guys like hearing about sports, if you guys like this show, then I urge you to go on to SoundCloud and look up the 816 Hour. It's a great podcast. Bryson is one of the hosts on that podcast, and I think he does a great job. You know, he's somebody that I love talking sports with, so thank you for the question, B-Mart. You're one of the GOATs to me, so thanks for all the love and support. Here is what he asks. Are you buying into the Raiders' hot start at all this season? Do they have a shot to dethrone KC for that top spot in the AFC West? How much does getting Bashaud Breeland and Mike Pennell help Kansas City? Love the vids, man. Keep killing it. Thanks again. So as for the Raiders, I see them more as a slightly above average, middle of the pack team in the NFL. They're 2-1 right now, and they just took their first loss this weekend. And I think that it really just proves that they're not really there with the big boys of the AFC, right? They lost 36-20 to the Patriots, a team that has looked pretty fantastic so far, and probably the team that's come closest to beating the Seahawks. I know the Cowboys were up there, and I do think that they'll get a chance to grab a wild card spot, but at this point, it's not a guarantee. The first 2 weeks, right, when they, went 2-0, they faced the Panthers, who I like the Panthers, right? And I like their quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, and I like their running back, Christian McCaffrey. But it's not a complete team, and it's not a team that we expect to be really good in the NFL this season. So I think that one was the Raiders being better, and the Raiders being a good team. They go and play the Saints, and this is a primetime game. It's their first game in their new stadium, and I think that the Saints look slow. And I think the Saints are kind of starting to fall off a little bit this year. So it's a good win for the Raiders, but it wasn't, beating the Saints 2 years ago or maybe even last year. I don't think this Saints team is as good. I just don't think that they're ready yet. I think that they have some growing to do. And they have a lot of solid pieces, and I think if they can keep getting Josh Jacobs involved a lot in the offense, it takes pressure off of their quarterback, Derek Carr. And I think that could help the offense to win games, because if Derek Carr, their quarterback, is asked to throw the ball too much, then, he's really good at not making mistakes. But at the same time, it's not something where, he is guaranteed to have good games. He had a pretty decent game against the Patriots, but he's not a perfect quarterback, and he's not a quarterback who I'd say can win you games solely off of his talent. I don't believe that they'll challenge KC for the division, the AFC West, but I can see them sneaking into the playoffs. If you look at the other teams in the AFC West, you have guys like the Broncos, who are extremely injured right now, and their starting quarterback is out for the time being. And they were seen as a wild card contending team. So with them kind of to the wayside for now, I think that might open up a spot. You look at the Chargers, and, they just went through a quarterback change. I'm not sure at how, their rookie Justin Herbert plays throughout all 15 weeks, I guess. But I don't think that the path to getting to the wild card is extremely tough. And I think that they should be able to win games against the Chargers and against the Broncos. And so if they can just keep winning their games outside of their division, like they did against the Saints and like they did against the Panthers, I think that they'll have a really good shot. Okay, so that's really all I have for the Raiders. So let's move on to his next part of the question, which is about Bashaud Breeland and Mike Pennel, and asking what their impact is going to be on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm going to go individually and just go Bashaud first, Mike Pennel second, and we'll talk about their impact on this Chiefs roster and how much getting them back means. So I believe that getting Bashaud Breeland back will be a huge sigh of relief for the Chiefs. It's not a game-changing kind of getting back your guy, but I think it's a sigh of relief, and here's why. It seems like every week a new cornerback or a new defensive back is getting injured. This time it's their standout rookie, L'Jarius Sneed, who injured his shoulder. At first it seemed like a collarbone injury, but they just confirmed it was something with his shoulder. Not sure for how long he'll be out just yet. But, last week it was Antonio Hamilton and Charvarius was out that game. Their cornerback depth is getting a little slim. And Bashaud was already one of their best cornerbacks. So getting him back kind of shores up this defense. And I think having him play alongside Charvarius Ward and Rashad Fenton should be good enough to not let up any huge games from opposing wide receivers. And I think the big thing is that it allows the defensive line to get more pressure and even coverage sacks. That's not something we've seen too much from KC just in the last few years in general, is coverage sacks. Playing such good coverage that it allows somebody from the D-line to sneak in and take down the quarterback. And they played a lot of quarterbacks who are good at, getting outside the pocket, using their legs so far. Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, probably the three best, if not Patrick Mahomes up there. So I think if they manage to keep their guy inside the pocket and get some more pressure, I think it's going to look even better for this Chiefs defense. As for Mike Pennel, I love Mike Pennel. Let me just say that. I love Mike Pennel, so this could be biased, but I could be overestimating this, but I think he could be the key piece in making this Chiefs team unstoppable again. The team that we saw that made incredible comebacks, that looked like they were unbeatable in the last part of the 2019 season. I think that's what Mike Pennel could be. And here's why. He proved to be fantastic against the run in the games he played for the Chiefs last year, and the Chiefs have looked bad at stopping the run this year. If you could find any significant weakness in the Chiefs so far through their 3-0 start to the NFL season, I think that it would have to be their run defense. They're giving up 153 yards to their opponents every single week. 153 rushing yards, and that's not good. And you can put some of that on other, parts of the defense. But I think we have really good run-stopping linebackers. You look at Wilson, and even Daniel Sorensen as a safety can play pretty good run-stopping, run coverage. But it looks like the defensive line is really where, we need to do better at run stopping. I like Chris Jones, and I think he's extremely talented. I think he's one of the best D tackles in the league. But if there was any weakness to Chris Jones' game, it would probably be run defense. I think having another D lineman like Mike Pennel, who is just fantastic at stopping the run. I mean, he even made some plays to get after the QB last season, but we all know why he's there. And I think if they can just get that aspect up, of their defense, combine it with the run-stopping linebackers, I think it might be over for the rest of the league. Because if you have a team that can play both sides of the defense extremely well, and they have Patrick Mahomes on their team with all the weapons that he has, I mean, the worst part of the team, I guess, would be the offensive line at that point. And even then, they didn't look very bad last night. I'll tell you what, they didn't. And so then I would say the Chiefs may not have any significant weaknesses. They would look like what I said the Ravens looked like last week. And, we saw what happened to the Ravens. But like I said before, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. And so those two re-additions, I guess you could say, are going to be big. And I think that people should be watching and seeing what this team looks like, later in the season. Because I think it's going to be scary. And I don't know. They could look better than last year at this point because they looked really good last night, I'll tell you what. So watch out for those Kansas City Chiefs, I'll tell you what. So that's everything. That's the whole mailbag. That's the topics for the day. So thank you guys once again for tuning in to this episode of the Man Watches Sports Podcast. If you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like. Please comment anything that you guys like. I don't really care. If it's support, if it's, feedback, if it's even negative, leave your dislikes if you want to. It helps me a little bit. Just hearing the things that people think could get better about the show. I've had a blast, and I want to thank you guys a ton for tuning in because this is my dream. This is what I love doing. I love following my dreams, and I love talking about sports. It's my favorite thing to do in the whole world. And, people around me might not always enjoy it. The people that don't enjoy sports that I hang out with, they know significantly more than they would have because they have to hang around me. And it's my favorite thing in the world to do. So I really enjoy doing this show, and seeing any kind of support or anybody watching really means the world to me. So for now, I've been your host, Austin Hoagland, and I'm going to sign off. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys tune into the next one. Thanks.